Very good evening to all of you once again. I'm ever so thankful that you all could join me. Welcome. We left off in 1 Kings 10 with Solomon building up such a mass of wealth and dealing with all of these other nations. He has become the most prominent man that has probably ever lived on the earth at this time, and I don't believe that anyone has really surpassed him in that sense. We come now to the fall of Solomon. This is in his older age. I believe that for a couple of different reasons we'll get into. But let's just get started with this. This is such a tragic chapter. If one would look at David, his father's sins, if you wanted to compare David's sins to ponds here and there, like ponds of water, Solomon's is like an ocean. Whenever David sinned, he would relatively quickly come back and repent and try to never do the sin again. Solomon, he just goes deeper and deeper and deeper, more so than anyone, I believe, in the earth at that time. Okay, verse 1. But King Solomon loved many strange women, together with the daughter of Pharaoh, women of the Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Zidonians, and Hittites, of the nations concerning which the Lord said unto the children of Israel, Ye shall not go into them, neither shall they come in unto you, for surely they will turn away your heart after their God. Solomon clave unto these in love. And he had 700 wives, princesses, and 300 concubines, and his wives turned away his heart. In a quick internet search, I typed in the king with the most wives in history. Guess whose name came up? TheVintageNews.com says King Solomon had more than anyone. I thought that Genghis Khan or some of these other, few and far between, glorious kings of throughout all the ages of men, I thought that there would be some of them that may have had more wives and concubines than Solomon. Apparently not. And Solomon was disobedient in a couple of different ways right here. First of all, he multiplied wives unto himself. That's against what God said to do. And also he took upon him pagan wives. These were pagan wives. And we'll learn about how Solomon, in his old age, in the book of Ecclesiastes, he appears to really not think any of them are any good. Let's just take a quick look at some of the writings that Solomon had written towards this time of his life, the end of his life as an old man. I don't even like saying an old man. I believe he's probably in his mid to late 50s right here, because he dies at about 60. He's not an old man like we would see whenever he dies. God cuts his life short. But in Ecclesiastes 7:25, he writes this. After writing the book of Proverbs in his youth, whenever he starts to multiply these wives, now he has 1,000 of them in his palace. And we see him saying this, and this is very telling. Pay close attention. I applied mine heart to know, and to search, and to seek out wisdom, and the reason of things, and to know the wickedness of folly, even of foolishness and madness. Let's stop right there. I think this, upon studying this chapter, I think that Solomon, towards the end of his life, it's a natural thing to be obsessed with death. Once that you get older, you become more and more obsessed with it. You start wanting to know what's on the other side. And we'll see how Solomon, he gives himself fully over to the wickedness of folly, wisdom, foolishness, and madness. He used himself as a type of guinea pig, like a lot of great minds do whenever they're trying to figure out a new thing. We're actually told about how Isaac Newton, whom I think was Albert Einstein's favorite scientist, he almost lost his eyesight due to one of these experiments. Isaac Newton wasn't just content to ponder apples falling to the ground. Consumed by curiosity about how light, optics, and vision work, he endured experiments during the mid 1660s in which he spent long spells staring at the sun and poking his own eyeball with a dagger to see how it affected his vision. Talking about Isaac Newton. Amazingly, he didn't go blind and went on to produce a revolutionary theory of light and its behavior, though it's not clear how much, if at all, his self-experimentation contributed to his understanding. But Solomon, he's wanting to even know what it's like to be foolish and to be mad. He tried to, and you have to remember, this is after he has been vexed with this demon worship. This is, I believe, after he comes out of Satanism. I believe that he is a repentant man. We'll come to that at the end of this study. But we also see how he's talking about madness. We know that Saul, King Saul, whenever he was vexed by the Spirit, he went insane. Do you remember how we went over that? King Saul, he was an insane individual. And I do believe that King Solomon also experienced that. Throughout the book of Ecclesiastes, this book of the end of Solomon's life, throughout it, he talks of mainly two subjects, and that is despair and death. He says, vanity of vanities, everything is vanity, nothing is worth doing, it's all just, love your money that you get and the wife and the children, love all these things, but still that's vanity. And then he thinks on death, talks about death an awful lot. But he also mentions women and the women that he's known. He makes this comment on, I believe, his wives. And I find more bitter than death the woman whose heart is snares and nets, and her hands as bands. Whoso pleaseth God shall escape from her, but the sinner shall be taken by her. He actually says that it's better to die than to be ensnared by one of these wicked women. He should know by this point. Behold, this have I found, saith the preacher, counting one by one to find out the account. Which yet my soul seeketh, but I find not. One man among 1,000 have I found, but a woman among all those have I not found. He means an upright man. He says, I found one in 1,000. That's how rare that they are. And he says, I have yet to find a virtuous woman. Lo, this only have I found, that God hath made man upright, but they have sought out many inventions. Like I said before, he should know, of course. God did make him upright in the beginning, but he sought out all of these other, just horrid things. But before we go any further, let me just read for you what he says in Ecclesiastes 8. He says this about death. There is no man that hath power over the spirit to retain the spirit, neither hath he power in the day of death. And there is no discharge in that war, neither shall wickedness deliver those that are given to it. He says, neither hath he power in the day of death, meaning death is inescapable, and there is no discharge or release from that war. Picking up back in verse 4. For it came to pass when Solomon was old, that his wives turned away his heart after other gods, and his heart was not perfect with the Lord his God, as was the heart of David his father. For Solomon went after Ashtaroth, the goddess of the Zidonians, and after Milcom, the abomination of the Ammonites. And Solomon did evil in the sight of the Lord, and went not fully after the Lord, as did David his father. Then did Solomon build a high place for Chemosh, the abomination of Moab, in the hill that is before Jerusalem, and for Moloch, the abomination of the children of Ammon. Now Moloch is a particularly dangerous one. Out of all these dangerous false gods, they're called devils, demons. But Moloch in Leviticus 20 was expressly warned against. Again, thou shalt say to the children of Israel, whosoever he be of the children of Israel, or of the strangers that sojourn in Israel, that giveth any of his seed, his children, unto Moloch, he shall surely be put to death. The people of the land shall stone him with stones. And if the people of the land do any ways hide their eyes from the man, when he giveth of his seed, his children, unto Moloch, and kill him not, pay close attention. Then I will set my face against that man and against his family, and will cut him off, and all that go a whoring after him to commit whoredom with Moloch from among their people. All the people that didn't say anything, all the people that didn't stop this, all the people that didn't put him to death, they'll all be cut off from among the people. And we will see even in tonight's study about how that happens to Judah, the tribe of Solomon. Now, as you'll see in this image, this is one of the images, much like what Moloch, a statue of Moloch would look like. They would have his hands out, and he's this cow or sometimes owl god, and a fire would be underneath his hands. And they would indeed sacrifice their children unto this idol. Now, they would do it for blessings upon their family, crops, protection, all kinds of different reasons. Psalm 106 says this, "Yea, they sacrifice their sons and their daughters unto devils, and shed innocent blood, even the blood of their sons and of their daughters, whom they sacrificed unto the idols of Canaan, and the land was polluted with blood." So if you're wondering whether Solomon may have given some of his sons or daughters unto this Moloch, I guarantee it. The primary way in order to worship Moloch it was child sacrifice. Now, you could burn a little incense to him and all this, but he really required, and still does, there's these Moloch statues. Just once again, look up Bohemian Grove in California. For the greatest blessings from these false gods, young male children. It's an ancient way of worshiping these devils. But the reason why I'm pretty certain that Solomon did sacrifice some of his sons and daughters unto these demons is because he is being influenced by his wives, in whom worshipped Moloch. He's being influenced by them. Him being the father and being influenced by the mother in order to worship, who do you think that they're going to give for child sacrifice? Their children. And likewise did he for all his strange wives, which burn incense and sacrificed unto their gods. I got to thinking of what would that be like today. Let's just say that Donald Trump was another Solomon. That would be like Donald Trump doing really well his first term, his first 4 years as president of the United States, and then in his second term start setting up demon statues like Satanism all over America, and every single state requiring it, setting them all up, and then passing out even going so far as passing out the mark of the beast, because that would today, knowing that the Antichrist is so near, then we know that we have the technology today. And if Solomon was promoting this idolatry throughout Israel, because you have to think, he had 1,000 women that he was trying to please. So you put up a high place here and there, sure enough, there's going to be hundreds of them everywhere. So this would basically be like Donald Trump becoming the Antichrist. And we'll see right here in just a minute how dark is the heart of Solomon. We'll see right here in just a second. And the Lord was angry with Solomon because his heart was turned from the Lord God of Israel, which had appeared unto him twice, and had commanded him concerning this thing, that he should not go after other gods, but he kept not that which the Lord commanded. Wherefore the Lord said unto Solomon, For as much as this is done of thee, and thou hast not kept my covenant and my statutes which I have commanded thee, I will surely rend the kingdom from thee, and will give it to thy servant. Notwithstanding in thy days I will not do it for David thy father's sake, but I will rend it out of the hand of thy son. Howbeit I will not rend away all the kingdom, but will give one tribe to thy son for David my servant's sake, and for Jerusalem's sake which I have chosen. Now we'll learn at the end of this chapter how 10 tribes go and they form the northern kingdom. This is the first chapter in the entire Bible in which actually specifically mentions the northern kingdom being formed. But the tribe of Judah and Benjamin stay, because Benjamin was located within the land of Judah, so Benjamin pretty much had no choice but to stay with him. It's no wonder that Solomon turned against the Lord, that he became faithless towards God. He was faithless to his women as well. And I mean, you take one, then you take another and another, you're faithless. You're just running with your passions and your lust. Many have argued that Solomon just did this for political reasons. That may have been some of it, but all the comments that I read are in agreement. This was his lust. He was just diving headfirst into all things of his passion. We even read in Ecclesiastes how he searched out everything. He wanted to know the good, the bad, and I believe that part of his demon worship was due to his fear of death. I believe that one of the motives behind it, once that he got really, really deep into it, was he wanted to know what was on the other side. And we see this today. People want to know this all the time, all over the place. And they use drugs. They try this ayahuasca and DMT. We've went over some of that. But they try these hallucinogenic drugs in order to try to tap into something on the other side of death. And the Lord stirred up an adversary unto Solomon, Hadad the Edomite. He was the king's seed in Edom. So now this king of peace, he's given a hedge. A hedge is put up around him. All of his adversaries, Satan, remember how we went over that? How they were all kept away. Satan, even the spiritual realm, it's believed, was kept away. But once that he started to meddle with these spiritual enemies, God raises up physical enemies against him on all sides, as we'll see. For it came to pass when David was in Edom, and Joab, the captain of the host, was gone up to bury the slain after he had smitten every male in Edom. Now once again, Edom located in the south of Israel. For 6 months did Joab remain there with all Israel until he had cut off every male in Edom. So what it's talking about is how David went to war against Edom, sent Joab down there to go to war. Joab trying to kill all the men, but a few escape, including this one. Then Hadad fled, he and certain Edomites of his father's servants with him, to go into Egypt, Hadad being yet a little child. Hadad probably about 20 years old or so. And he escapes the battle, and he goes to Egypt. And they arose out of Midian, and came to Paran, and they took men with them out of Paran, and they came to Egypt unto Pharaoh, king of Egypt, which gave him a house, and appointed him victuals, and gave him land. And Hadad found great favor in the sight of Pharaoh, so that he gave him to wife the sister of his own wife, the sister of Taphanes, the queen. And the sister of Taphanes bare him Genubath, his son, whom Taphanes weaned in Pharaoh's house, and Genubath was in Pharaoh's household among the sons of Pharaoh. So this Edomite, he runs to Pharaoh. Pharaoh really likes him. He gives unto him this wife, the sister of his own wife. He gives unto Hadad to marry. Hadad, he has a child with her. And then he hears that David and Joab are dead. And when Hadad heard in Egypt that David slept with his fathers, and that Joab, the captain of the host, was dead, Hadad said to Pharaoh, Let me depart, that I may go to mine own country. Now pay attention right here. Then Pharaoh said unto him, But what hast thou lacked with me, that, behold, thou seekest to go to thine own country? And he answered, Nothing, howbeit let me go in any wise. Hadad isn't, it's believed, Hadad is not wanting to tell Pharaoh about any plot against Solomon that he has, because what he's wanting is vengeance against Solomon. He's wanting to go back into the land of Edom, build up a little army, and then come up against Solomon. And God stirred him up another adversary, Rezon the son of Eliada, which fled from his lord Hadadezer, king of Zobah. And he gathered men unto him, and became captain over a band, when David slew them of Zobah. And they went to Damascus, and dwelt therein, and reigned in Damascus. So you have a northern tribe now coming against Solomon, and you also have the Edomites, who are going to be coming against Solomon. That is from the north and the south, and within, as we're about to learn. Enemies are everywhere now. And he was an adversary to Israel all the days of Solomon, beside the mischief that Hadad did, and he abhorred Israel and reigned over Syria. And Jeroboam, that's an Israelite, and Jeroboam the son of Nebat, and Ephrathite of Zeredah, Solomon's servant, whose mother's name was Zeruiah, a widow woman, even he lifted up his hand against the king. And this was the cause that he lifted up his hand against the king. Solomon built Millo and repaired the breaches of the city of David his father. Now, once again, it's believed right here is the Millo, these steps, but also it's believed that this wall behind it could have been part, we don't know. But Jeroboam, he's angry about them building that. And it's believed that he's angry because, as we see right here, Solomon sets him up over these workers. And Solomon really likes Jeroboam. Jeroboam, he's also a mighty man of valor. He's one of these big, strong men, go to war and everything. He's also a young man and industrious. He made him ruler over all the charge of the house of Joseph, which would have been Jeroboam's own people. But it's believed that Jeroboam gets mad because he sees the forced labor that Solomon is putting on his own people, the people of Ephraim. And it came to pass at that time when Jeroboam went out of Jerusalem that the prophet Ahijah the Shilonite found him in the way, and he had clad himself with a new garment, and they two were alone in the field. And Ahijah caught the new garment that was on him and rent it in 12 pieces, representing the 12 tribes of Israel. Now this is a prophet. Ahijah is a prophet, speaking to this young Jeroboam. And he said to Jeroboam, Take thee 10 pieces, for thus saith the Lord, the God of Israel, Behold, I will rend the kingdom out of the hand of Solomon, and will give 10 tribes to thee. You also notice a very peculiar promise that the Lord makes with Jeroboam. It's very similar to the one that he made with David, how he'll establish his kingdom. Kind of shows you the heart of Jeroboam at this time. It seems as though Jeroboam is a godly man at this point. But he shall have one tribe for my servant David's sake, and for Jerusalem's sake, the city which I have chosen out of all the tribes of Israel, because that they have forsaken me, and have worshipped Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Zidonians, Chemosh, the god of the Moabites, Milcom, the god of the children of Ammon, and have not walked in my ways to do that which is right in mine eyes, and to keep my statutes and my judgments, as David his father did. Notice how God says, Solomon has turned his back on me. Well, we'll see how it is. First of all, God promises to cut him off from the land if he falls into idolatry. We read in Leviticus 20, which God does. He cuts Solomon's life very short. 60 is a very young age to die naturally. It's about 10, 20 years shorter, as a matter of fact. But he also cuts the nations off from Judah and only leaves Benjamin with them. Pedersen and Austell had good commentary on this. They said, It was indeed a shock for Rehoboam, the son of Solomon that succeeds him after his death, and the tribe of Judah to be reduced overnight from the most powerful tribe in an illustrious and world-renowned kingdom to a small state that was soon stripped of what wealth it had left. So we see Solomon's cut off early, the tribe of Judah is cut off from the rest, and their wealth, their military prowess, their might, all reduced to just this one little spot now after Solomon's death. And it happens immediately after Solomon's death. It's not like Rehoboam reigns over Israel, all the tribes, for 20 years and then it's cut off. I mean, it happens immediately. Howbeit, I will not take the whole kingdom out of his hand, but I will make him prince of all the days of his life for David my servant's sake, whom I chose, because he kept my commandments and my statutes. Now, there may be a little bit of a telling thing in that, how if a man serves the Lord with all of his heart, how the Lord may show a special kind of mercy upon his sons and daughters and his descendants for his sake. And we all want mercy for the little ones. So, but just keep that in mind. But I will take the kingdom out of his son's hand, and will give it unto thee, even 10 tribes. And unto his son would I give one tribe, that David my servant may have a light alway before me in Jerusalem, the city which I have chosen me to put my name there. And I will take thee, and thou shalt reign according to all that thy soul desireth, and shalt be king over Israel. And it shall be, if thou wilt hearken unto all that I command thee, and wilt walk in my ways, and do that is right in my sight, to keep my statutes and my commandments, as David my servant did. He's making the same promise to Jeroboam. Amazing. That I will be with thee, and build thee a sure house, as I built for David, and will give Israel unto thee. Now there's another similarity coming up between Jeroboam and David as well. So we're seeing another type of David early in his life now. He's no David in the general sense. And I will for this afflict the seed of David, but not forever. Okay, now that's the end of the prophet telling Jeroboam 10 tribes are going to go with him after Solomon's death. And Solomon gets word of this. Ahijah, apparently he was a known prophet in the land. But Solomon sought therefore to kill Jeroboam, and Jeroboam arose and fled into Egypt unto Shishak, king of Egypt, and was in Egypt until the death of Solomon. So, just like Saul seeking to kill David after the prophecy is told to David that he will have the kingdom, now we see Solomon trying to kill Jeroboam after the prophecy is told that he will rule over much of Israel. There's a lot of similarities here. And apparently at this point, you kind of get the feel that the other nations, they have now a shaky kind of relationship with Solomon at this point. You get the feeling that Solomon neglected a lot of his duties. And because Egypt now, they're willing to take in his enemies from him. So apparently they're not on good terms anymore. And the rest of the acts of Solomon and all that he did and his wisdom, are they not written in the book of the acts of Solomon? And the time that Solomon reigned in Jerusalem over all Israel was 40 years. And Solomon slept with his fathers, and was buried in the city of David his father, and Rehoboam his son reigned in his stead. Now, it would be appropriate for us to end, now that we see Solomon's death, it would be very appropriate for us to read the last chapter that he actually wrote about his life. What can we learn from this man whom had such a promising beginning? He had all the wealth and all the love and all the admiration of the entire world, and then he falls head just in the deep end of devil worship. What can we learn from what this man says after? And I do believe he, obviously, if you read the book of Ecclesiastes, it's thought to be his last writing on earth. And a lot of people would ask, was Solomon saved? Did he go to heaven? I do believe that he did, but his life was cut short due to devil worship. But what did Solomon say in the last chapter? What did he want to end and tell all the people? Remember now thy Creator in the days of thy youth, while the evil days come not, nor the years draw nigh, when thou shalt say, I have no pleasure in them. He says, remember the Creator in the days of thy youth. Remember how he was in the days of his youth? While the evil days came not, while he was at peace, nor the years draw nigh. And now he says at the end of his life, when he's old and he's went through all this demon worship and these baby sacrifices and all these women vexing him, I have no pleasure in these days, he says. And the very last words that Solomon wrote that we know of, let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. All of life. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. For God shall bring every work into judgment with every secret thing, whether it be good or whether it be evil. It is a strange thing, not really, but peculiar, how he mentions the judgment to come. It's almost like Solomon sat back after all of these evil days and evil deeds that he had committed, And he thought, I'm going to be judged for these things. And every secret thing, you get the feeling he had a lot of secrets, whether they're good or evil. We can learn an awful lot from Solomon. You can have every single material blessing in the entire world, but without the blessing of the Holy God, it means nothing. Absolutely nothing. I hope that you all learned something today. That does conclude our study of Solomon. We will next be getting into Rehoboam, his son, the splitting of the kingdom, and we'll go from there, Lord willing. God of peace be with you. Amen.